What do you mean, New York values? What are you getting at there?
You know, I'll tell you, the rest of the country knows exactly what New York values are.
In a critical way, said you have New York values. Does that seem like criticism to you? Do you embrace New York values?
I embrace. Look, in New York, we took a big hit with the World Trade Center. Worst thing ever. Worst attack ever in the United States. Worse than Pearl Harbor because they attacked civilians. They attacked people having breakfast. And frankly, you know, if you would have been there and if you would have lived through that like I did with New York people, the way they handled that attack was one of the most incredible things that anybody has ever seen. Here we had these two massive 110-story buildings coming down with all of the death and all of the destruction and even the air, the atmosphere, and the smell of death. And very few people could have handled, very few cities could have handled it like that. And I'll tell you something, New York City and New York got a tremendous boost all over the world because very few people, and now you look at the area, it's incredible what they've rebuilt. So when people want to knock New York, first of all, you shouldn't be doing it because you have a massive population there. But when you want to knock New York, you got from me. New York is an amazing place with amazing people.
I got to say amen to that. I mean, we talked about it on the anniversary of 9/11 and just talked about how incredible New Yorkers were and how those attacks actually, and this way Ted Cruz sounds like he's out of like 1987 because after 9/11, I came up as a guy that lived in the Deep South my entire life. A month after 9/11, and I just looked at New Yorkers and I walked around the town and I was tearing up. It's extraordinary. And we talked about this on the anniversary of 9/11. What an extraordinary city this is on the front lines of terror in America, and how America sort of put their arms around New York City and adopted this great city because they knew it's on the forefront of the war against terror. But really, again, this goes to the hypocrisy of Ted Cruz that we were talking about before. Would you like to talk about Goldman Sachs values? What do you like? I've got nothing against. I know a lot of great friends of mine that work at Goldman Sachs. But if he's going to play this game, does he want to talk about Goldman Sachs values, Harvard values, Princeton values, lawyer values? I mean, Ted Cruz, again, being a hypocrite here by acting like he's, you know, some poor country lawyer that just fell off a turnip truck. And then he comes to New York City and he speaks differently about same-sex marriage in New York City fundraisers as he does when he's in Middle America. It doesn't seem like a smart line of attack. And I got to say, that's one of the best answers I've heard Donald Trump give the entire campaign. I got probably about 17 million people cheering for him in that answer.
Well, I think Ted Cruz and his team thought they probably had a pretty good hit on Donald Trump with that line. I think overlooked with all the bluster and the show of Donald Trump is how good he is at this. And you know he doesn't have a big team of people. They didn't poll test that answer. He was asked a question by Halpern and Heilman, and he came back and said, if you talk about New York, you're talking about those first responders that we all cheered on 9/11. You're talking about the people who came in and rebuilt that city. That is political skill on display. And I'm not here to defend Donald Trump, and I don't agree with a lot of what he says, but he's good at this. He's very good at this.
And it has the added value, Mark Halpern, of being true. What he said about New York City, what he said about first responders. I'm really surprised by the tone deafness and really sort of the, I'm just going to say it, the stupidity of Ted Cruz attacking a city that's been on the front line of terror since 2001.
I agree with everything you and Willie Joe said about that response, and I'll just only add a slight different point, which is it was from the heart. That was not, as good as he is as a politician and political skills, that was from the heart. He loves New York. His defense, you know, it was passionate. And I agree with you that this is maybe not be the best fight for Ted Cruz to pick. Look, there's a reality here. Donald Trump for decades has been tested in the national spotlight. In this campaign, he has gotten a ton of scrutiny, and he knows how to handle himself. Yeah. And he has, we've discussed, a Teflon that goes beyond Reagan's in terms of being able to survive flaps. Ted Cruz has not gone through any of that. Yeah, he's gotten some scrutiny, but it's about to amp up big time. Yeah. And when he lashes out at Trump, he opens himself up to counterattack. And on the New York thing, you saw Trump there very effectively.